We have organised for a panel discussion, and a panel discussion involving 4 of the most senior leaders in our industry. The discussion will happen up here, as you can see, where the light's on. Those of you sitting near the podium will be on camera soon, so I hope you did your hair and all that stuff. It's very important. We have 4 managing directors to welcome to the podium. And with the intention of them joining us up here, it'll be like a group of people up here chatting about safety leadership, personal journey in that regard, and messages to share with the 400 of us that are here. And the 400 of us that are here get to witness the conversation. It's kind of how it's going to go. So I'm really hoping it's a good conversation, because we're right up here in the middle. I have no doubt it will be. So if you would please join me here on the centre podium, Mr. Martin Peterson, MD of Maersk Oil's Danish Business Unit, Mr. Flemming Nielsen, Senior Vice President and Country Manager at Dong Oil and Gas, Mr. Robert Frimpong, MD of Wintershall North Sea, and last but by no means least, Mr. Anders Newman, MD of Hess Denmark. Thank you, gentlemen. Please welcome them to the stage. We are all every single one of us up here, we're all in an impossible situation. We're all sitting with our backs to somebody, so apologies in advance. And apologies to those I'm facing. Anyway, so in getting ready for the conference, we asked these gentlemen to consider a number of questions, which I'll share with you in a moment. And we'll use those questions just to get the conversation going, and then the conversation will go where it goes. And we're going to do this for about 20 to 25 minutes before the first break. So let me share with you what the questions were. The questions that we asked these gentlemen to consider were: what is there to share with this group assembled about your own personal relationship to safety, and sharing your own personal story? So you'll be relieved to know that this isn't speech making, this is people talking about where they've been and where they've come from and where they're at. What would they say the 3 key principles of safety leadership are? If they were to kind of roll it up in 3 key principles, what would they be? How do you want all of these people, these 400 folks, how do you want them to interact with one another and engage in the conference today? And last but by no means least, as a question, what would you like people to walk out the door with? What would you like people to take away today? So they were the questions that we asked these gentlemen to consider. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. It's great to have this opportunity, and I'm sure everybody here appreciates it. So let's go first. And Martin, perhaps I could start with you. Let's go first with, what is there to say about your own personal safety leadership journey?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. And thanks. Maybe I can just start by saying I think it's great that we can assemble this many people for the conference. We are in tough times in the industry, and for me, this is really a testament that we are serious about safety, and we are not compromising. I think to the question, for me, what's really important about that is what makes you tick, right? And that we all have sort of that relationship to safety of why is this really important to us. And for me, it was a hard one, because I have a few actually that sort of made a difference on my life. And the one I would like to share is from my time in UK. I've been part of a couple of quite serious incidents there, and there are actually 2 maybe I can mention. I'll do it very shortly. One was just starting as a managing director, make a big impression, and we had one of my colleagues who was hit by a container offshore, and the picture I still have in my mind is the helicopter from our offices. From my office, I could actually see the helicopter, the medevac, coming in and landing at the hospital. And what went through my mind at that point in time was, the wife, had that been my wife, had I been in, we didn't know how serious hurt he was. All the thoughts going through your mind, being called to the hospital because somebody. And for me, I started reflecting on, so what could I have done? Are we not clear about expectations, procedures, pressure of work, and all that stuff? And then, just after, I had another incident, which was one of our floating production units during a storm that tore its anchors and actually ripped up quite a lot of the infrastructure, a major incident in the UK. And since then, I'm always on call with my mobile, and I put it at my bedside when I go to bed. And since then, every time there's a storm, even here in Esbjerg, I just don't like it. It's made such an impression on my life that, and when you do the forensics, you can see all the barriers that sort of failed. So for me, that's sort of my driver, and I think about it each and every time I go to bed and put my phone down, I think about it. So to make it short, for me, it's what's really important here is for all of us, what really makes us tick and why is this important about it? And for me, I'm passionate. I do not want anyone on my platform to be hurt, and it doesn't matter whether it's Maersk Oil or whatever is on the call on.
Sure. Very much the responsibility of a leader and the unease that goes with it.
Yeah, and when I reflect back, so I've spent 8 years in UK, and we had some great projects and lots of challenges, but that's really not what I recall. It's not building all the steel. What I recall is joining a company. We made an acquisition that was the worst safety performer in UK, and we turned it around to a top performer.
Fabulous.
And that's what makes me proud when I think about my time there, because that's people, it's relations, and it's what we did together. It's actually not building the platforms or drilling the wells.
Nicely said.
I think the personal angle, that's what's in for me.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think also on the personal side, that's where you really do take the learnings from. I mean, if I go back 20 years in terms of sort of personalizing this, actually being in an evacuation, we had a gas release on the UK platform, being part of the team there, the ESD going off, and then the entire evacuation of the platform. Thankfully, everybody was safe, but you recall the intensity. That's what sticks with you. Then all the processes kick into place in terms of, how we design the platform, how we put our safety processes in place, how we arrange the emergency response. And that stays with you the whole time. And from that, you take away that really it's in our heads in terms of how we set ourselves up culturally. It's also in our hands in terms of how we design things. But core, it's getting everybody home safely. People come to work with our teams safely from their families, and it's up to us to ensure that they also go back home safely and in one piece.
Yes, indeed. Beg your pardon. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would echo that. The constant motivation is to care for people, that chronic unease about that mobile phone ringing, that's what should drive you every day to relentlessly pursue that. And where I really get my inspiration is also for how do you do that? What are the leadership principles? And in Hess, we've gone through a journey in the unconventionals in the US for the past 5 years. And one of the beauties of that system is really the starting point is the people and the developing the people. Before you can do that, you need to develop yourself, and then aligning everybody, making sure every activity every day is towards the goal of not just the personal safety, but also in our industry we have the process safety, which during these times with low prices is a very important piece to also prioritize and work on and relentlessly pursue that. And then lastly, as to the film in the beginning, that we don't just have leaders being experts, it's really mobilizing every single employee as the safety leader and spending our time on developing people so they become problem solvers. They can identify their own problems. We have a culture where they're actually comfortable bringing the safety problems to us, and then we coach them and help provide the resources to make an army of problem solvers to search for perfection in safety.
Yes, very nice. Fleming, you and I chatted briefly last night about the need to acknowledge the difficult environment, the difficult business environment, and not lose the plot on safety. What is there to say about that?
Well, I think one of the topics that we see coming up when we look at incidents and accidents, one of the elements, I can mention many, but one of the elements is distraction. And I think it's in these times where it is difficult in industry, we really have to be very focused on people not being distracted. And of course you have distraction in what's happening at the moment.
Yes.
There are cuts happening in the industry. we're going through a tough time. Am I going to lose my job? How about mortgage, etc.
Yes.
But I would also like to point on distraction in other ways, and that is that we are being bombarded with many, many things. Our employees are being bombarded with many things. Yes, they do have all the safety measures in place. We all do that. They do a job. But how do we ensure that they are present? And that's where I think we, as leaders, have a task of making sure you have that focus. Distraction is not only from, as I said, the business, but if you just take them an example, one day on the platform, they go from work site to the galley. They might check their phone and emails.
Yeah.
Just on that journey, they will have posters saying, remember to eat well. New IT procedures. They probably have 3 mails on, we need a survey on, are you satisfied with the food at the canteen, or what do you think of the flowers in front of the building?
Sure.
And if not only that, then you have emails from friends and families. And
yes.
So I think we have a task, and at least going forward, and making sure that we are focused and we are being present.
Yeah.
And clearly adding to the situation in the industry right now, that is something we need to look at.
Sure, got it.
And I think to echo that, or to continue from that, it's up to us also to continue to communicate that the focus still is on HSE. I don't think that we have the luxury, to use that word, of backing off on that. We're going to have to make a lot of changes in the industry anyway to manage this current situation. But that's the one area that we cannot go back. We have to basically keep moving forward on that aspect and keep communicating consistently, clearly into the team the need for the focus on safety. And I think that's an area that, in terms of reductions or changes, the changes can only be in the positive direction.
Very good. So you mentioned principles. So let's go to this question about what are the key principles? What principles stand out? What principles have become established for you as leaders in your careers?
I think a leader needs to have, again, coming out of the lean inspiration, where if you think of that as a system, so you improve your entire business, you got safety, you got quality, you got delivery, and you got cost. So it's an integrated system. The beauty of that is if you work on all of those, improve all of those, you get sustained performance in all areas.
Yes, you get a whole
so
picture.
the leaders need to apply the same methodology to all of those aspects and have standard work, so that the leader has a regular routine of going to the work site and working with employees, seeing that they are in fact identifying their problems, that they have targets set, they're working towards the standards, and then that you support them in that problem solving. So I think one key characteristic for me is that we don't end up in the office, that we actually take the time, we go out and work and see where the work is done, and work with our employees, empowering them and coach them. So leaders are really becoming servants and coaches, not just directing work.
Sure.
A different angle to that could be if, this is Task Force 0, and I'm pleased to say that Dong ENP here in Denmark at the moment are at 0, both in terms of incidents and also on total recordable incidents. We're at 0 on both of them. You may applaud now. No? So when we then look at what are the near misses we do have then, what is the denominator of the ones we do have? And one thing that has been possible over the last couple of years is somehow we don't always manage to identify risks. So when we go back and look, they did all the right thing, they have the right training, we have what we believe is the right instructions, they did all the paperwork, but yet we failed to identify certain risks. So how come those groups didn't do that? And I think for me that is one of the things we need to work even more on. And one of the things I realized is if you don't have enough diversity in the group working together, they will not be able to identify those risks if they look too much like each other. In other words, how do we avoid biased decisions? And that, I think that is one of the focus areas where we as in our leadership can see how can we make sure we build that in, that doesn't happen. For example, through how we put the groups together.
Got it. So being at the front line, continually looking to identify the risks.
I would say from my perspective, you asked for 3 things. I think first and foremost, it does require courage, right? So, and commitment. So it requires, I think, a real hard commitment to say this is where we want to go. This is what we believe is achievable.
Right.
And you know, where we've seen the most big step changes, if you recall the Formula One presentations that have been the last couple of years, you know, that was actually a management discussion about this is just non-acceptable. We want to go here. We don't know how to get there,
Yes.
but that's what we want. So I think for me, that commitment of, you know, a declared future would be the language of J, but say this is really what we are up for. We don't know how to get there, but we want to get it.
Sure.
And then the second part in my mind is the engagement, because nobody can do this alone. So from my chair, where I'm sitting, it's not just my leadership team, but it's all leaders in the organization. Really, how can we move to a position where we are, you know, all up for playing this game, and where we want to be role models and model this for the teams. And when we usually have this, you know, hierarchical triangle for an organization, and I. You know, what I really like to do in safety is get everybody on board and flip it around. So that you really see the leader as the enabler, but the workforce is empowered and enabled to really run. And I was actually offshore at Tyre West last week and engaging with what we call incident-free ambassadors out there. And I sort of got that feeling because, wow, these guys from have been one of our challenging performers really got the whole team on board, up for it, and how they drive it, the commitment they have in place, it sort of made me feel this place that, wow, we are, you know, things are happening out there, the organization is really moving. So for me, that's really key.
Very clear.
I would agree with all of that.
Sure.
I would say that from my perspective, to add to it, firstly, that we within Wintershall and from my leadership team, commitment clearly is there, but to communicate that commitment, to make it visible to the team, to walk the talk, as it were, so that it is seen that we are engaged in this and that we see that as a company-wide activity. I also would add that learning from others, that we don't just look to ourselves, but we look to the rest of the industry, to our colleagues, to our partners, and then take those learnings, so you don't end up repeating what someone else has done. And I think to propagate those learnings also, we have done to the rest of the industry, what we've not done well, as well as what we've done well, and then to sort of build from there. So I think to add to all of that, I think we're better as an industry or as a company when we are learning from one another, and this conference is also a good way of doing that. And I think that
was actually also my last point, the learning part. Well, I think there's another element, and that is not only learning from the accidents, but actually also really being good at learning and sharing best practices of where things are working and what works really well.
Since I've seen the questions, I think that's one of the takeaways I'd sort of say from here. We should all take with us.
Sure.
Be open and be willing to share our experiences, share the learnings, as well as then take those learnings.
And then the leader's role becomes very much also going and helping teams standardize those learnings so that we have full organizational learning, that we don't just learn it once, that we actually capture it and we make that the way we operate going forward. And that's a clear leader role, that you actually go and you work with your teams to make sure you then capture it in a standard that you can use as the model going forward.
That's going to be key as the industry also changes. The demographics are sort of working against us in any case. So that's going to be quite an important part of making sure that those learnings get propagated through the teams and through the different demographic ranges we have.
Your point is the experience that's leaving the industry because of downturns and the attraction of the industries to young people and education.
I think another element would be visibility. When we talk leadership, actually being there, we had I think around 2,500 people through incident-free workshops. That's actually a question at our stand. If you want to win a Lego ship, we had 2,500 questions at these sessions, and we got the leadership team to be present at each session. And I made as many as the man I could. And there were actually people coming to me afterwards. I thought it was obvious to do that, but a lot of people came and said, "Whoa, Martin, you actually took the time to be here," and this was, contractors across the industry.
Yes.
Afterwards, that was the only feedback that really stayed with me was this thing about people really appreciated that we were there, that I was there, or one from my leadership team were there, because they said, "Whoa, you're really serious about it, right? You really mean this. You're willing to invest your time." So it's about putting actions, and I guess walking the talk.
A very clear demonstration.
Yeah.
But it comes back to you walking the talk, and I think we have to keep in mind that anyone who has leadership of employees, anything you do is amplified so many times. And there was once a wise man who said to me, "What you do speaks so loud that I can't hear what you say." And I think that is something we need to keep in mind all the time.
Did you hear that? It's not a bad saying, that.
I think in our industries also, we have directly employed, but we do rely on a number of contractors. So another leadership piece that is very important is that we take the time to partner up with our sub-suppliers. I regularly invite our key suppliers, leadership, Steen, you come with me offshore at least twice a year, to then work and partner up and then communicating these, making this alignment, trying to coach the team, take their feedback and say, okay, what are your problems that you're working on, and then go back and try and support that so that you remember to partner up in this industry that's highly dependent on contracting workforce.
Sure. So let me say something here. It's pretty normal for people to hear messages like this, witness conversations like this, and think, oh yeah, that was a great message from the senior people. Yeah, great, I heard the senior people say that message. And then the title and the theme for this conference is Greater Results Because of You. That's you, you, sitting in your seat. So there's the message from senior leaders, and then there's what's the opportunity to take on? What's the opportunity that this conference presents? What's the opportunity walking out of here at the end of today, and what you can take on for yourself? So on that score, how would you gentlemen ask the folks assembled here to interact with one another, to engage in the conference, to engage in the conversations? What should they do when they go on the break? Apart from hoover up all the food, who should they reach out to? What way do you want them to play here?
Seek insight. Seek insight.
Seek insight. Say some more.
Do things you don't normally do. Talk to companies or people you don't normally talk to. Seek that diversity. I was lucky last night at dinner to have a talk with our captain coming on later.
Yes.
And you just get so much new insight and inspiration. As an industry, we really have to watch out we don't get too narrow-sighted and keep using the same words. The minister mentioned that as an industry we are cooperating, and we should cooperate more across, and probably some of you have read the press release that we will, together with the Metroselskabet, will cooperate with them on safety.
Yes.
And I know that in safety statistics, maybe we are at a better place than they are, but it has to go the other way. I'm sure we can learn something from them. So it goes across industries. And coming back to what you mentioned, Martin, about having the Formula One driver, the team member coming in here and all the others. So seeking that diversity, ask questions, talk with people you don't normally talk to.
I agree with you, Fleming, that the way to really start by developing yourself, that model, and how do you do that? You step out of your comfort zone. So even though this is a safety conference, if you could fight over the microphone, if you could step out of that comfort zone and engage in those sessions, I think that would be very important. I think we have the Metro company, but we also have a large number of students from the university here today.
Yes.
So again, this is all new. Our little industry, we have our set ways of looking at safety. If we can get that inspiration, get that on the table, get the insights that these groups see that are not normally part of this industry, really appreciate if we could get that insight and contribution to the debate today.
And
Right.
I think also be open to share your own experiences, because I think when you give out, you also get back. And if we are in our conversations at the coffee or at the stands and so on, also willing to tell our stories, then I think it would be reciprocated by others who can then provide you with those insights that Fleming mentioned. And that becomes then an exchange. And I think that's the true value of conferences like this, that we're able to exchange deeply in a meaningful way.
Maybe I can add from my perspective, and I think that's great. I fully agree. Inspiration, be curious, and find the way. But then also, take some good notes and put it into action, and find just one or two things and put into action. Because we can all go inspired and fired up. And for me, what really works, hearing from other industries and making the links back to my own business. Then you sort of get good ideas, but tomorrow you're back in the office and you have all your emails and the busy day, etc. in there. So find that one or two things that you want to put into action and do something. That
Yes.
Be a mobilizer.
Be a mobilizer. So when you go upstairs, you've got to mix. No gathering in your normal groups. No, yeah, you're laughing. You know what I'm talking about, right? Oh, there's my gang in the corner. I'll go eat over there. No, move around, mix, diversify, seek insight. All right, and if there was one thing you wanted people to leave with, what would that wish be for them?
So for my part, and I think you mentioned it at the beginning, we can all make a difference. In safety, in my mind, there's no hierarchy in safety, right? We are all safety leaders and we can all make a difference. And you can all make a difference, no matter what the job is and the impact in the business. So really being clear about that accountability and commitment and say, this is what I want to go back and change in what I can do in my business and go and do it. I think that would be really powerful if there were 400 people leaving here and going out and making a difference.
What a difference.
That's right, drive total commitment to safety, not just safety as a priority, but as a value that you take back in every decision you make. You have that as your reference. In the beginning, during, and after that, you reference that. So you have total commitment to safety, both up and down an organization and across. And if we all help us remind each other, reference it, that if we can take that away, I think we're a long way on the way. I think the next step is to then start with the problem solving and develop further on striving for perfection. But that's starting point, certainly.
We are on a good trend, but I do not believe we can be satisfied with where we are as a business. We are still hurting people, we still have high potential incidents, and that's what keeps me awake. We need to do much better than what
I like what you say about priorities and values. We let people and circumstance mess with our priorities, but we don't let anything mess with our values. So safety is a value. It's unshakable.
I would simplify it also in context of the others. Enthusiasm, a renewed enthusiasm for safety, both not only in the workplace, but also at home in our personal lives. And if we really live it the way we believe it, I think, and if that comes out of this conference, I think that would be good.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think that if people leave here and feel, as being said, they can make a difference, if they're energized and somehow see themselves and their own leadership, whether it's a personal leadership or leadership of other people, if they see that in a new light, making more sense, hence that also gives you that motivation and passion. And maybe perhaps even some very concrete examples, like Martin said, of actually, I want to go back home and try this. Because I talked with that person that worked over there, and it reminds me of challenges I'm having. So if we can foster some kind of wave of movements, I think that would be fantastic.
We're coming close to the end of this piece and to a break. I heard Minister Larsson make a very clear request in his address, which was to be competitors and to collaborate and partner in safety. I think that's in evidence in this conversation, and I thank you very much for taking this time and joining us. We will have you back together later in the day, and I look forward to that. For now, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.